For 3:47 mornings, I ordered the same coffee, and nobody ever remembered my name until he did. Ethan Parker never expected a simple cup of coffee to change the way he saw his own life. Every weekday at exactly 7:15 a.m., he walked through the glass door of Willow Street Coffee, a small neighborhood cafe tucked between a bookstore and an old apartment building in downtown Seattle. The world outside was always rushing. Cars moved through crowded streets. People hurried with their phones in their hands, and everyone seemed to have somewhere important to be. But inside that cafe, Ethan had found a quiet corner where time slowed down. He always ordered the same thing, a cold brew with extra ice, no sugar. It was not because it was his favorite drink. It was because it was easy, simple, predictable. Nobody asked questions. Nobody needed to know anything about him. At 28 years old, Ethan had become very good at being invisible. He worked as a graphic designer, spent most evenings finishing projects at home, and had slowly convinced himself that a quiet life was a safe life. After a difficult breakup 2 years earlier, he stopped looking for unexpected moments. He stopped believing that someone could notice the small details about him and actually care. The cafe was just part of his routine, a place where he could sit by the window, open his laptop, and watch the city move without feeling like he had to be part of it. Then one Monday morning, everything changed. The familiar voice behind the counter was different. "Good morning. You're Ethan, right?" Ethan looked up from his wallet, surprised. The person standing there was new. A young man wearing a dark green apron, with warm brown eyes and a calm smile that made the busy cafe feel a little quieter. His name tag read Noah Bennett. "Sorry, have we met?" Ethan asked. Noah smiled slightly and shook his head. "Not exactly. You come in every morning around 7:15. You sit by the window. You usually work on your laptop for about an hour. And you always order a cold brew with extra ice and no sugar." For a moment, Ethan did not know what to say. It was such a small thing. A coffee order. A daily habit. Something most people would forget immediately. But hearing someone say it out loud felt strangely meaningful. "You remembered all that?" Ethan asked. Noah shrugged gently. "I remember things that matter." Those words stayed with Ethan longer than he expected. The rest of the morning felt different. The coffee tasted the same. The city outside looked the same. But something inside Ethan had shifted. For the first time in a long time, he wondered what it felt like to be noticed. Not because he was successful. Not because he had something impressive to offer. Just because someone had paid attention. As Ethan packed up his laptop and prepared to leave, Noah placed the receipt beside his cup. Ethan glanced down and saw his name written neatly at the top. It was the first time the cafe had ever felt like it belonged to him. And as he walked out into the morning air, he found himself looking back through the window, wondering who this new barista really was, and why a simple memory of his coffee order suddenly felt like the beginning of something he never expected. The next morning, Ethan told himself he was not going back to Willow Street Coffee because of Noah. He told himself it was because the coffee was good, because the location was convenient, because it had become part of his routine. But when he pushed open the cafe door and heard the familiar sound of the espresso machine, his eyes immediately searched for the person behind the counter. Noah was there, arranging cups and greeting customers with the same calm smile Ethan had remembered all night. "Good morning, Ethan," Noah said before he even reached the counter. Ethan stopped for a second. It was such a small thing, hearing his name spoken so naturally, but it created a feeling he could not explain. "You remember my name too?" Ethan asked with a quiet laugh. Noah looked amused. "I thought you noticed that yesterday." Ethan smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I guess I was too surprised." From that day forward, their conversations slowly became part of Ethan's mornings. At first, there were only a few sentences while Noah prepared his drink. They talked about the weather, the books Ethan carried, and the music playing, softly through the cafe speakers. But little by little, those small conversations became something Ethan looked forward to. Noah had a way of making ordinary moments feel important. He never rushed Ethan. He never looked past him while waiting for the next customer. He listened. One rainy Thursday morning, Ethan walked into the cafe wearing a jacket covered with tiny drops of water. Noah immediately noticed. "You walked here again?" he asked. Ethan looked surprised. "How did you know?" Noah pointed toward the window. Because every time it rains, you come in 5 minutes later than usual, and you always forget to bring an umbrella. Ethan laughed. It was a simple observation, but it made him realize something. Noah was not just remembering his coffee order. Noah was paying attention to him. Over the years, Ethan had become used to people remembering his work deadlines, his responsibilities, and the things he could do for them. He was not used to someone remembering the little things that made him who he was. That afternoon, Ethan found himself thinking about Noah while working at his desk. He wondered why a few minutes of conversation each morning felt brighter than most of his entire day. He wondered why he was smiling at his computer screen like someone who had just received good news. The answer made him uncomfortable because it felt unfamiliar. He liked being around Noah, not just because Noah was kind, but because Ethan felt like he could finally relax. He did not have to pretend to be more confident. He did not have to prove he was interesting. He could simply be himself. A few days later, Ethan arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. He stood outside for a moment, surprised by his own actions. He was not there because of the coffee. He was there because he wanted to see Noah. And somewhere between a familiar drink, a remembered name, and a few quiet conversations, Ethan realized something had changed. For the first time in years, his routine was no longer about escaping loneliness. It was about looking forward to someone being there. For the next few weeks, Ethan and Noah slowly became part of each other's daily rhythm. Nothing happened all at once. There was no dramatic moment that changed everything. Instead, it was built from small pieces, the kind of moments most people would overlook. A smile across the counter, a shared joke before the morning rush, a conversation that lasted just a little longer than expected. Ethan started noticing details about Noah too. He learned that Noah always arrived 20 minutes before his shift because he liked having a quiet moment to prepare the cafe before customers came in. He learned that Noah kept a small notebook near the register where he wrote down ideas for new drink combinations. He learned that Noah loved old movies, especially the ones where characters found happiness in unexpected places. One morning, Ethan walked into Willow Street Coffee carrying a small paper bag. Noah looked up with curiosity. "What is that?" he asked. Ethan placed it on the counter. "A thank you." Noah raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Ethan smiled. "For remembering things." Inside the bag was a small notebook with a simple blue cover. "I notice you always write ideas on random pieces of paper. I thought you might need something better." Noah looked at the notebook, then back at Ethan. For a moment, he seemed genuinely surprised. "You noticed that?" Ethan nodded. "I remember things too." That sentence stayed between them for a few seconds. It was not just about the notebook. It was about something deeper. They were both people who spent most of their lives paying attention to others while quietly hoping someone would notice them too. After that day, their conversations became more personal. Ethan talked about his childhood, his love for design, and how he always wanted to create something meaningful instead of just finishing projects for clients. Noah shared stories about moving to Seattle, leaving a small town in Oregon, and trying to build a life that felt like his own. They discovered that they had more in common than either of them expected. Both of them had spent years trying to become the person everyone else needed them to be. One Friday evening, Ethan stayed at the cafe a little longer than usual while finishing some work. The sky outside turned orange as the city lights slowly appeared through the windows. Noah walked over after his shift ended and placed a cup of tea on Ethan's table. "You have been staring at that screen for 3 hours. Noah said. "You need a break." Ethan laughed. "Are you always this observant?" Noah smiled. "Only with people I care about." The words were simple, but Ethan felt them differently. He looked at Noah and realized that somewhere along the way, this stranger behind the coffee counter had become someone important. Someone whose messages he looked forward to. Someone whose voice could change the mood of an ordinary day. But even as Ethan felt himself getting closer, a small fear remained. He had been comfortable being unnoticed because it meant he could never be disappointed. Being seen by someone also meant giving them the chance to truly know him. And that was something Ethan was not sure he was ready for. But when Noah smiled across the table that evening, Ethan found himself smiling back. Maybe being noticed was not something to fear. Maybe it was the beginning of finally being understood. Noah Bennett had always been the person who remembered everyone else. He remembered the regular customer who needed a little extra time to decide. He remembered the elderly man who liked his coffee slightly warmer. He remembered the student who came in every afternoon before an exam because the quiet corner near the window helped her focus. Paying attention was simply part of who he was. But what Ethan Parker did not know was that Noah had been hoping someone would notice him too. Long before Ethan started staying a few minutes longer after ordering his cold brew, Noah had noticed the quiet man by the window. He noticed how Ethan always checked if the seat beside him was free before sitting down. He noticed how Ethan smiled at strangers who held the door open for him. He noticed how Ethan always thanked every employee, even on mornings when he looked exhausted. To most people, those details meant nothing. To Noah, they revealed the kind of person Ethan was when nobody was watching. Noah had spent years working in different coffee shops, meeting hundreds of people every week. Most conversations were quick and forgotten. Customers came in, ordered their drinks, and left. But Ethan was different. There was a calmness about him that felt familiar. It reminded Noah of himself, someone who appeared comfortable alone, but secretly wished for a place where they belonged. One evening after closing, Noah sat alone at a small table near the window, looking through the blue notebook Ethan had given him. The pages were still mostly empty, but the first page had a handwritten message. Remember to create something you love. Noah smiled when he read it again. It was a simple sentence, but meant more than Ethan probably realized. Noah had spent a long time making other people feel welcome, yet he rarely allowed himself the same kindness. Ethan had somehow noticed that. The next morning, when Ethan walked into the cafe, Noah prepared his usual drink before he even reached the counter. "You're getting too good at this," Ethan joked. Noah smiled. "Maybe I just have a good memory." Ethan looked at him for a moment, then laughed softly. Maybe, but neither of them said what they were really thinking. Maybe it was not just memory anymore. Maybe it was interest. Maybe it was care. As the weeks passed, Noah found himself looking forward to Ethan's arrival. He started wondering how his day was going before he even saw him. He wondered if Ethan had finished his latest design project. He wondered if Ethan had finally taken a break from working late every night. These thoughts surprised Noah because he had always been careful with his feelings. He believed that meaningful connections should happen naturally, without pressure or expectations. But Ethan made being open feel easy. There was no need to impress him. No need to pretend. Around Ethan, Noah could simply be Noah. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning the counter, Noah watched Ethan laughing at something on his laptop. It was a small moment, but it made Noah realize something important. He did not just enjoy seeing Ethan at the cafe anymore. He wanted to know the person behind the routine, behind the quiet smiles, behind the familiar order. And for the first time in a long while, Noah wondered if the person who had always remembered. Everyone else had finally found someone worth remembering too. For the first time in years, Ethan Parker noticed that his mornings were no longer something he simply had to get through. They had become something he looked forward to. Every day, he found himself walking toward Willow Street Coffee with a small sense of excitement that he could not quite explain. The same streets, the same buildings, and the same morning sounds somehow felt different because he knew Noah would be there. But Ethan was careful. He reminded himself not to move too quickly, not to create expectations, not to imagine a future that might never happen. He had learned the hard way that feelings could make people vulnerable. Still, Noah had a way of making those worries disappear. One Tuesday morning, Ethan arrived at the cafe and immediately noticed something unusual. Noah was not behind the counter. For a moment, Ethan felt a strange disappointment that surprised him. He looked around the room, almost as if he expected Noah to appear from somewhere. Then he caught himself and quietly laughed. He was there for coffee, he told himself. That was all. A few minutes later, another barista handed him his usual drink. "Noah had to step away for a delivery this morning," she explained. "He said to make sure you still got your usual." Ethan looked down at the cup in his hand. Written on the side was a small message in black marker. "Have a good morning, Ethan. See you soon." It was only 5 words, but Ethan stared at them longer than he expected. A simple note from someone who was not even there felt more meaningful than all the messages he had received from people who were supposed to know him well. That evening, Ethan found himself thinking about the note while sitting at his apartment. His place was quiet, organized, and comfortable, but suddenly it felt a little emptier than usual. He realized something that both surprised and frightened him. He missed Noah. Not the coffee. Not the routine. Noah. The next morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. He stood outside the cafe for a moment, watching the warm lights through the windows. He wondered if he was becoming too obvious. He wondered if Noah felt the same way. When he finally walked inside, Noah looked up and smiled immediately. "You were early today," Noah said. Ethan smiled back. "Maybe I wanted to beat the morning rush." Noah gave him a playful look. "That sounds suspicious." Ethan laughed, and for a moment, everything felt easy. They talked longer than usual that day. Noah asked about Ethan's latest design project, and Ethan asked about Noah's dream of someday opening his own small cafe. They talked about places they wanted to visit, foods they wanted to try, and little things they enjoyed that most people never asked about. But then something unexpected happened. Noah became quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Ethan looked up. "Of course." Noah glanced toward the window before continuing. "Do you ever feel like people only notice certain parts of you? Like they see what you do, but not who you are?" Ethan did not answer immediately because the question felt too familiar. He slowly nodded. "More often than I would like to admit." Noah smiled softly. "I think that is why I like talking to you. You seem like someone who understands that feeling." Ethan looked at him, realizing that Noah was not just being kind. Noah understood him, and maybe that was the reason their connection felt different. They were not two people trying to impress each other. They were two people who had spent years feeling unseen, finally discovering what it meant to be recognized. As Ethan left the cafe that morning, he looked back through the window and saw Noah smiling at him from behind the counter. This time, Ethan did not feel like an invisible customer walking through someone else's world. He felt like someone who had finally found a place where he belonged. The days that followed felt different for Ethan Parker. Nothing about his routine had changed on the outside. He still walked the same streets every morning. He still entered Willow Street Coffee at nearly the same time. He still ordered his cold brew with extra ice and no sugar. But inside, everything had shifted. A simple conversation with Noah had opened a door Ethan thought he had closed years ago. The possibility of letting someone get close. The possibility of being known. One Friday morning, Ethan arrived at the cafe and noticed Noah was unusually quiet. He was still smiling, still greeting customers, but there was something different about him. Ethan recognized it immediately because he knew that feeling. The feeling of being present while your mind was somewhere else. When a morning rush slowed down, Ethan approached the counter. "Everything okay?" he asked. Noah looked surprised. "You noticed?" Ethan smiled. "I guess I'm learning from you." Noah laughed softly, and the tension in his expression disappeared a little. He admitted that he had been thinking about his future. He loved working at the cafe, but he had always dreamed of creating a place of his own someday. A small coffee shop where people did not just come for drinks, but where they felt welcomed. Ethan listened carefully. He did not interrupt or immediately offer solutions. He simply listened because he knew sometimes people did not need advice. Sometimes they just needed someone to believe their dreams mattered. "I think you'll be good at that," Ethan said. Noah looked at him. "You really think so?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, because you already do the most important part. You make people feel like they belong." Noah became quiet for a moment. It was a simple compliment, but it meant something to him. Later that afternoon, Ethan realized something important. He had spent years believing that love was supposed to arrive as a dramatic moment, something impossible to ignore. But with Noah, it was different. It was built slowly through conversations, trust, and small acts of kindness. That evening, Ethan sat at his apartment and looked through the photos on his phone. He found one from a few weeks earlier. It was a picture of the blue notebook he had given Noah, sitting beside a coffee cup on the cafe counter. He smiled when he remembered how surprised Noah had been. Ethan realized that he had started collecting little memories without even trying. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Ethan walked into Willow Street Coffee and found Noah waiting near the counter with a nervous smile. "I made something for you," Noah said. Ethan looked confused. Noah handed him a small paper bag. Inside was a homemade pastry and a handwritten note. Ethan opened it and read the message. "Thank you for reminding me that my dreams matter." Ethan looked up, touched by the gesture. "Noah, this is really thoughtful." Noah took a breath, then smiled. "I wanted to do something nice for someone who has been doing the same for me." For a moment, the noise of the cafe seemed to fade. Ethan realized that what they had built was no longer just a morning habit. It was a connection, a quiet, unexpected connection that had grown stronger with every conversation. And as Noah looked at him with a hopeful expression, Ethan felt a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. Maybe happiness was not something you searched for. Maybe sometimes it appeared when someone finally saw the person you had always been hiding in plain sight. The week after Noah gave Ethan the handwritten note felt strangely peaceful. There was no sudden change between them. They did not rush to define what they were becoming. Instead, they continued building something that felt natural, one small moment at a time. Ethan still visited Willow Street Coffee every morning, but now he no longer felt like he was simply passing through. He felt like he was entering a place where someone was genuinely happy to see him. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the cafe after work instead of his usual morning visit. He had spent the entire day staring at his computer screen, trying to finish a difficult design project, and he realized he needed a change of scenery. When he opened the door, Noah looked up with a surprised smile. "You are here at a different time," Noah said. Ethan laughed. "I know. I'm breaking my own routine." Noah smiled. "I thought you liked routines." Ethan looked around the familiar cafe and nodded. "Edo, I just realized some routines are worth changing." The word surprised even Ethan. A few months ago, he never would have said something like that. He had always protected himself by staying comfortable. But Noah had shown him that change did not always mean losing something. Sometimes it meant discovering something new. They spent the next hour talking after the cafe became quieter. Noah told Ethan about the challenges of saving money for his dream coffee shop. Ethan shared his fears about taking creative risks with his career. They both realized that they had something in common. They were both standing at the edge of new chapters, afraid of leaving behind the versions of themselves they had known for years. "You know what I think?" Noah asked. Ethan looked at him. "What?" "I think you are much braver than you believe." Ethan smiled slightly. "That is funny coming from someone who is too nervous to open his own cafe." Noah laughed. "Fair point." Their laughter filled the quiet space between them. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of moment Ethan had always wanted but never thought he would find. A few days later, Ethan received an invitation from an old friend to attend a small gathering downtown. Normally, he would have declined. Crowded places and unfamiliar conversations were not his favorite things. But this time he decided to go. Before leaving, he stopped by Willow Street Coffee. Noah noticed immediately that something was different. "You look like you're going somewhere important," Noah said. Ethan nodded. "A friend invited me out tonight." Noah smiled. "That is good. You should go." Ethan hesitated. "I usually avoid things like that." Noah leaned against the counter. "Maybe it is time to try something different." Those words stayed with Ethan. He realized Noah had never tried to change him. Noah never pushed him to become someone else. He simply reminded Ethan that there were parts of himself he had stopped exploring. That evening, Ethan went to the gathering. It was not perfect. He felt nervous at first. He almost left early. But then he remembered Noah's words and stayed. When he returned to the cafe the next morning, Noah noticed the difference immediately. "You seem happier," Noah said. Ethan smiled. "Maybe I am." Noah looked at him warmly. "Good." And in that simple moment, Ethan understood something important. Noah had not walked into his life to complete it. He had walked into his life and reminded him that he was already someone worth knowing, someone worth choosing, someone worth seeing. The days after Ethan stepped outside his comfort zone brought a quiet confidence he had not felt in a long time. He started noticing small changes in himself. He spoke more openly with coworkers. He accepted invitations instead of immediately finding reasons to stay home. He even started exploring new ideas for his design work instead of choosing the safest options. Noah never asked him to become a different person. Somehow, just being around Noah reminded Ethan that he was allowed to grow. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan visited Willow Street Coffee and found Noah organizing supplies behind the counter. The cafe was peaceful, with sunlight coming through the windows and soft music playing in the background. It felt like a completely different world from the busy streets outside. "You were working on your day off?" Ethan asked. Noah looked up and smiled. "Only for a few hours. I like being here when it is quiet." Ethan looked around the cafe. "I think I understand why." Noah smiled. "Why?" Ethan took a moment before answering. "Because you make this place feel like more than a coffee shop." Noah looked away for a second, clearly touched by the compliment. "That means a lot coming from you." Ethan noticed the sincerity in his voice. Over the past few months, he had learned that Noah was someone who gave kindness easily, but he did not always recognize when he deserved it in return. Later that afternoon, they sat near the window with 2 cups of coffee between them. It was the first time they had spent time together outside of Ethan's usual morning visits. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about childhood memories, favorite places in Seattle, and the small dreams they had never shared with many people. Noah told Ethan that he wanted to create a cafe where people could feel comfortable being themselves. Ethan admitted that he wanted to design something meaningful, something that made people feel connected. "Maybe we both want the same thing," Noah said. Ethan smiled. "What is that?" "To create a place where people feel seen." The word stayed with Ethan, because he knew exactly what Noah meant. For most of his life, Ethan had believed being independent meant needing nothing from anyone. But now he understood that connection did not make him weaker. It made life richer. A few weeks later, Ethan received an opportunity to work on a major design project with a company in another city. It was the kind of opportunity he had dreamed about when he was younger. A chance to prove himself. A chance to move forward. But instead of feeling only excited, Ethan felt uncertain. He sat at Willow Street Coffee after closing time, sharing the news with Noah. "This is a great opportunity," Noah said. Ethan looked down at his coffee. "It is, but I keep thinking about what I would be leaving behind." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled gently. "Ethan, I never want to be the reason you stop chasing your dreams." Ethan looked up. "What if I do not want to leave?" Noah's expression softened. "Then do not stay because you are afraid. Stay because it is what you truly want." Those words reached deeper than Ethan expected. Noah was not asking him to choose between love and his future. He was reminding him that real care meant wanting someone to become the best version of themselves. That night, Ethan walked home thinking about everything that had changed. Months ago, he believed a quiet life was the only life he deserved. Now he understood something different. The right person did not make your world smaller. The right person made you brave enough to explore it. 6 months later, Ethan Parker realized that the most important moments in life were often the ones nobody planned. They were hidden inside ordinary mornings, quiet conversations, and small choices that seemed meaningless at the time. Willow Street Coffee still looked the same. The warm lights still filled the room every morning. The sound of the espresso machine still blended with the soft conversations of customers. The small table near the window was still Ethan's favorite place. But now, when he sat there, he no longer felt like someone watching life from the outside. He felt like he was part of it. Ethan had accepted the design project and spent several months traveling between Seattle and the new office location. It was challenging, but it helped him discover a confidence he never knew he had. He created work he was proud of, met new people, and learned that change did not mean losing himself. It meant discovering new parts of who he was. Throughout that time, Noah remained the person who supported him without ever making him feel pressured. They talked every day, even when they were busy. They shared small stories about their days, exchanged pictures of interesting places, and continued building the connection that had started with a simple coffee order. When Ethan finally returned to Seattle, the first place he visited was Willow Street Coffee. Noah was behind the counter, just like the first day they met. But this time, there was no distance between them. No uncertainty. No fear of being noticed. Noah smiled when he saw him. "You are back." Ethan smiled. "I am." Noah prepared his usual drink, but before handing it over, he He paused. I changed something. Ethan looked curious. What? Noah pointed to the cup. Instead of Ethan's usual order written on the side, there was a different message. Welcome home. Ethan looked at the words and felt a familiar warmth. It reminded him of the first note Noah had ever given him. Back then, Ethan was someone who believed he was easy to forget. Now, he was standing in a place where someone had been waiting for him to return. Ethan said, I used to think people only remembered important things. Big achievements. Big moments. Noah leaned against the counter. And now, Ethan looked around the cafe, then back at Noah. Now I think the small things are the ones that matter most. Noah smiled. Their story had never been about a perfect moment or a dramatic beginning. It had been about two people slowly learning that they deserved to be seen. Ethan once believed that being independent meant never needing anyone. Noah once believed that caring for others was enough. But together, they discovered something different. A meaningful connection was not about completing someone who was incomplete. It was about finding someone who encouraged you to become more yourself. Years later, Ethan would still remember the morning when a new barista remembered his coffee order, not because of the drink itself, but because it was the first time in a long while that someone noticed him without asking for anything in return. And Noah would always remember the quiet customer by the window who gave him a simple notebook and reminded him that his dreams mattered. Sometimes life changes through the biggest decisions we make. Other times, it changes through the smallest gestures. A remembered name. A familiar smile. A person who sees you when you thought nobody was looking. And sometimes, that is how an unexpected love story begins.